Welcome back to This Week in Magic Online Finance. I'm your host, Chaz Andres, and as always, let's get started with the news. The big story of the week in the greater Magic sphere are the Ixalan previews, but they're not really affecting Magic Online Finance yet, so for us, the big story are the vintage restrictions and unrestrictions that took place over the last week. Monastery Mentor and Thorn of Amethyst have been restricted, while Yawgmoth's Bargain has finally been let loose. Now, there aren't a lot of pros writing about the future of the vintage metagame, so there aren't really a lot of places I can go and research this and figure out where things are going to end up standing once the dust is settled. It seems like Workshops is going to be more or less okay, while the Mentor decks are going to take a bigger hit. I might avoid speculating on Young Pyromancer, some of the cantrips, some of the cards that really made those Mentor decks hum. That said, I'm pretty bullish on the Vintage Index overall. The format shakeup is coming at a nice time because it dovetails with the introduction of Vintage Leagues, which has already caused renewed interest in the format. And between these two things, I feel like a lot of people on Magic Online are going to be spending the next few weeks thinking about and brewing decks in the format. If you would like to buy in, now is the time. Let's move on to gaining ground, where in Standard, the Scarab God was the big winner of the week yet again, jumping 7 tickets from 13 to 21. Now the reason for this is that Temur Energy, increasingly misnamed, is the best deck in the format. And I say that it's misnamed because the variant that splashes black for the Scarab God is quickly becoming the most popular and successful variant. Now that said, the price chart to me indicates that 21 tickets is the Scarab God's current ceiling. That could change. If this deck continues to do really well through the beginning of Ixalan Standard, the Scarab God could gain 10 or 15 more tickets from here. If not, this may end up being the high watermark. So right now, I'm in a bit of a holding pattern on this card. I'm waiting to see where the format evolves, and especially what goodies we get in Ixalan that may affect this deck's playability going forward. Now in Modern, the card that gained the most ground was Liliana of the Veil. It jumped 7 tickets from 72 up to 79. And there are a lot of good fundamental reasons why this card should be worth more than it is right now. The Modern Masters reprint was just long enough ago that the supply has started to dwindle, it's performing really well in the metagame right now, and overall, it's probably one of the 4 or 5 most powerful cards in the entire Modern format. But interestingly enough, that's not why Liliana of the Veil jumped this week. It actually jumped due to the fact that it's seeing play in the new best deck in Legacy, 4-colored Leovold. And unlike in Paper Magic, where Legacy playability doesn't really affect prices all that much anymore, in Magic Online, Legacy is still a major player. Now that deck's other key card, Leovold Emissary of Trest, also spiked this week. It jumped 12 tickets from 30 up to 42. Now both Liliana and Leovold have good long-term fundamentals. If they're not reprinted or the metagame doesn't shift considerably, they're both probably going to keep going up from here. But if you're looking for opportunities for short-term flips, I'd start looking at the other key cards from that Legacy deck that haven't really been affected yet. Deathrite Shaman, Snapcaster Mage, Polygon's Command, Baleful Strix. These are the kinds of cards we may see as next week's big gainers. Moving on to the biggest loser, where in Standard, it's an old favorite of mine, Collective Brutality. The card dropped 3 tickets from 14 down to 11. And this does make some amount of sense. Eldritch Moon is rotating in a couple of weeks, and Mono Black Zombies has fallen out of favor in Standard. That said, I'm actually a buyer at current retail. I don't think it's going to drop anymore at rotation. And even if it does, the long-term trend looks great. This is a card that sees play in 4 of the top decks in Modern right now, as well as a bunch of the tier 2 and 3 lists. It's one of those format staples that isn't going to go away. And even if you buy in now, and it drops a bit between now and October or November, it's a sort of card that's going to be worth 20 or 30 tickets a year from now. It's really a no-lose situation as long as you're okay having your tickets tied up in a card that just looks really good over the long haul. Moving on to the biggest loser in the Modern Index, and yet again we have a card whose playability really isn't all that impacted by Modern. It's Monastery Mentor, which lost 4 tickets thanks to the vintage restrictions, dropping from 9 down to 5. Now at the moment, the drop seems to have bottomed out at 5 tickets. This appears to be the card's short-term price floor. And while I don't really love it as a buy, there is a chance it's going to go back up in the future. After all, a card that was good enough to be restricted in Vintage may end up seeing play in Legacy and Modern going forward, depending on what else is printed going forward. I'm not going to run out and grab a ton of these, but I'm certainly not going to sell the ones I have in my collection. Now the sneak of this week is Grafdigger's Cage. Grafdigger's Cage bottomed out at 2 tickets back when Modern Masters 2017 came out, but it's up to almost 10 tickets again now. And this is one of those cards that has been as high as 25 tickets in recent memory. I don't think it's going to get up to that number again because Modern Masters 2017 did add a bunch of copies to the supply. That said, it still sees a lot of play in a lot of decks across multiple formats, and I see no reason to believe it isn't going to hit 15 or 20 tickets again at some point in the future. If you still need Grafdigger's Cages for your collection, now's the last chance to pick them up for a while under the 10 ticket mark. Let's finish off the week by taking another look at the MTGO Traders hot list. These are the cards that MTGO Traders is paying a little bit extra for right now, generally because they're in demand. And it's worth knowing this information. You can find it yourself at mtgotraders.com/hotlist or on Magic Online at hotlistbot or hotlistbot2. I wanted to spend this week taking a look at the Amonkhet Invocations, which are in kind of a weird place online. In paper Magic, they're worth a ton, because they're shiny and cool and you can stick them in your cube. Online, they're not really worth all that much, and that's because you can't redeem them. Now, I'm fairly high on some of the other masterpieces because they look awesome, but enough people dislike the look of the Invocations that, especially on Magic Online, I don't think they have a ton of long-term value beyond what the card actually does in its normal form. Now, if you do decide to sell, the 2 most valuable are Containment Priest and Force of Will, which are both just a little bit over 30 tickets each. Coming in second is Doomsday, just below 30 tickets. And then below that, you have a tier of cards between 15 and 20 tickets apiece that includes Omniscience, Opposition, Blood Moon, and Through the Breach. That's all for this week. Don't forget to join me next Monday where we'll be taking a deeper look at a couple of cards from Ixalan. In the meantime, like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out some of the rest of our content. See you around.